So a few days ago, we did make a video talking about Connor Bedard, the top pick in the 2023 NHL Entry Draft, and we had discussed everything that was going on at that time. How Bedard, compared to fellow 2023 draftee Matvei Michkov, was playing a lot worse. And how there were many things to go on with Bedard, and how I, as a fantasy hockey owner, have been very disappointed and all this stuff. I'll admit it's a little bit selfish of me to go out there and bring him up in that way because, hey, he was one of my keepers in my hockey league, and I'm doing very poorly because he hasn't been scoring any points. And ultimately, despite my frustrations, I still recognize that he's going to be a good player, right? He's going to be a franchise-defining guy. He's going to have 80, 90, 100-point potential. He's that caliber of a dude. He's great. We had him here on stream earlier in his career before he was an NHL player and prospect. Yeah, I still thoroughly believe that was him that we had spoken to in the comments and that I had played video games with. But ultimately, Connor Bedard is in a really tough spot, and that video a few days ago illuminated some of those ideas. However, things have gotten worse for Connor Bedard, and it doesn't really look like it's going to be getting any better anytime soon. Now, yesterday, as I was coming back home from Whistler, my friends and I, we did watch the Chicago Blackhawks and Philadelphia Flyers game that was going on at a White Spot. I had a really nice, what was it? A bacon and shrimp pasta? It was really, really good. My goodness, I don't usually like shrimp much, but that was fantastic. And whilst we were eating, catching up, getting some breakfast as we were coming on our way home, we watched that game, and throughout the entire broadcast on NBCSN, I believe it was, if not that, then it might have been something else, the cameras just kept on going to Connor Bedard. Like, every break in the play, every time there was a whistle, every intermission, they were just talking endlessly about Bedard. And every time they would do that, they would then show camera footage of Matvei Michkov, and then they would bring up some little graphic or a stat that said, hey, Bedard has scored 0 goals, Matvei Michkov has scored 12. They keep on showing all these stats, comparing Bedard and Michkov, using Bedard's slump to their advantage to get this narrative going. And I was like, yeah, guys, this is really unfortunate because Connor Bedard, of course, is a talented hockey player, but wow, have things been going poorly for him. And I, as a fantasy hockey owner, obviously I would express my frustrations too, show off the Yahoo Fantasy comment section because that is like the most toxic place known to man. It's like an old COD lobby, but digitalized in a form that we could all access if we have fantasy sports. But the thing is, we're making this video here today not necessarily because of that Bedard and Michkov game from yesterday, not necessarily because of what I had talked about with my friends at the White Spot, but because of an article published on ChicagoSunTimes.com by Ben Pope. Connor Bedard sounds lost and discouraged, and the Blackhawks' illogical line usage is partly to blame. Mired in an 11-game goal drought, Bedard doesn't feel like I'm really doing anything productive. And they put this quote on the TV broadcast at the White Spot as well. They ate this up. Ultimately, this is not going to be available to y'all on the interwebs because it is behind a paywall, so I'll leave a link in the description to this Chicago Sun-Times article if you wanted to read this yourself. But a lot of these things were posted on social media, and I wanted to dive into it. Y2416 went out there and posted some of these comments on the R Blackhawks subreddit, so you can go ahead and check out this. It's also going to be linked in the description if you wanted to see this without getting the paywall. But take a look at this. From the article, many factors are contributing to Connor Bedard's slump, most of all from his own performance, of course. He's struggling to get to high dangerous areas to unleash his unique shot, for instance, but the factor that should be easiest to address is Bedard's line mates. Coach Luke Richardson's resistance to committing himself to figuring out what works best for Bedard in that regard has become thoroughly perplexing. On the other hand, it doesn't make any sense to keep Joey Anderson, who always excels defensively alongside Dickinson but offers very little offensive ability, on the opposite wing. Anderson admitted Friday that the moment I start trying to force plays to Connor is when I'll start really looking bad. On one hand, since Anderson is still there, it makes sense to continue deploying that line against opposing teams' best lines. As usual, they did a fairly good job with those shutdown duties Thursday against Alexander Barkov, even with Bedard demonstrating his much improved defensive instincts. I'm not doing much offensively at all, Bedard said, so I've got to find a way to be productive. That defensive role was obviously different for me, but it's good to do that. On the other hand, those difficult matchups provide Bedard even fewer opportunities to break out of his offensive drought. And at this point, what's best for his morale and long-term development matters far more than what gives the Hawks the best chance to win on any random night. On one hand, Richardson desperately needs to stop shuffling his lines after every single loss. The entire roster, Bedard included, needs to be given time to build chemistry and establish consistency. On the other hand, perhaps one more shuffle to one especially logical combination would make a difference. And then you had these comments. Posted by Ben Pope on Twitter, Connor Bedard looked the most discouraged I've ever seen him after practice today. I could name 100 things I could do better. I don't know, man. It's been frustrating for sure. I just don't feel like I'm really doing anything. Keep chipping away at it, I guess, and hopefully I'll find my game again. And then a lot of the replies are going out there and talking about this stuff. It hurts to read. This is ruining Bedard's development. Just put him on a line with Teuvo Teravainen. There are also a lot of justifiable criticisms tossed over to Luke Richardson's way. But for Connor Bedard to even admit that he's not really doing all too much, to flat out say, yeah, I'm not really doing much offensively. I need to get going here. Things are so different for me. I've never really played this kind of a role before. It ends up being the most disappointing situation for a guy who did win himself the Rookie of the Year trophy last year. He was a near point-per-game guy. He was fantastic. But this season, Connor Bedard is all the way down there at 3 goals in 21 games. He's got 15 points. Sure, he's on pace for 59, but last year he had 61 points in 68 games played. Connor Bedard is in a much tougher spot, and ultimately he hasn't scored a goal since, when was that? Saturday, October 26th against the Dallas Stars? That was a month ago. Connor Bedard hasn't had a goal in a month. And a lot of these different line combinations and rotations, he's playing with defensive guys, he's playing with younger guys who don't really know how to do offense. Like, it's not looking good. And there was another thread here as well that was also illuminated in the Chicago Blackhawks comment section. Dom from The Athletic had an article yesterday that basically said the same thing. Bedard with Teuvo and Foligno was working fine and was far better than any line we had last year. Bedard with limited minutes with Hall and Bertuzzi also has been pretty good. It makes no sense to Dom to not use those lines. That's why we signed those players. He also criticized Luke Richardson for playing with Dickinson because although Dickinson has been good, Dickinson has been getting the tough defensive minutes, which allowed Bedard to get easier minutes. With the two of them together, they'd be facing the toughest competition, which is exactly what happened when he was matched up against Barkov all game. A reply says, I think that's kind of the point though, to get Bedard used to playing against top competition. Is Bedard going to be a true top-tier player, or is he going to be a sheltered power play specialist? It might be more fun as a fan to watch Bedard score more in a sheltered role, but what is best for his long-term development and for the Hawks long-term is to probably improve his all-around game. Then you have yourselves another reply, that's not the point at all, actually. If you can get McDavid against Reeves, you choose that matchup every time. At home, Luke Richardson literally chased Barkov with Dickinson and Bedard. We cannot score goals. Let's not put our best offensive player against a Selke guy on purpose. It's literally hockey 101. I don't think he's a moron. He understands hockey. I think he made a bad decision. Once Bedard joined that line, it became a scoring line. Either put them in favorable deployment like you do for all your scoring lines, or change the darn lines. So at the end of the day, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Connor Bedard admitting that things are going pretty bad and that he is not doing much offensively. I think maybe there's a little bit of solace there from folks like me who have Bedard in fantasy and who are seriously relying on him to win their weeks. Like, I am miraculously tied up in my category league right now. Connor Bedard only getting a few shots and like 1 block in the week is not helping at all. But ultimately, you know what they say on Dr. K, right? Proper diagnosis always precedes proper treatment, or whatever it is. Is it the other way around? The best treatment is always preceded with proper diagnosis. Essentially, if you understand what's going on, if you understand what is wrong, it is easier to address what is wrong. Versus if you're just kind of going about, you don't really know what's happening. Oh, I'm not scoring any points. Why is that? I don't know. Let's just keep on doing what we're doing and see if it works. Then it's like, okay, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to improve. But if you actually do acknowledge, okay, this is where things are going, I'm being put in a much more defensively inclined role, I'm not used to this, sure, I can try it, but it's not what I'm used to, I'm not good at this in particular. When you understand what's going on, that's where it's like, yeah, you can now take steps to improve because you have a baseline of where to come from. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Connor Bedard admitting everything going on here and him talking about what's went wrong with him and his gameplay the past little while. Thoughts in the comment section. The article and the Reddit thread are going to be in the description as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.